Well, happy Easter, everybody. The Lord is risen. He is risen indeed. You can be seated, everybody. Thank you, worship team. That was amazing. Man, I love you guys so much. If we haven't met, my name is Jason. And my wife and I started this church because we love people and we want to see people take the next step in their relationship with Jesus. And so I'm so honored you're here. Happy Easter. You look good, everybody, in your Sunday best. Some people are like, Jason, you normally wear jeans. Why are you wearing a suit? And the truth is because we dress up for things that matter, for celebrations that matter. And there's nothing that matters more than what happened 2,000 years ago on Resurrection Sunday. And so we celebrate it today. We do. Well, look, if you were here last week was a party. It was a celebration. We had guests from all over. In fact, we have another guest today. I just want to shout out my friend, Dr. Terry Rayburn here. Would you say hi to my friend, everybody? He is a mentoring voice in my life. He and I went through our doctoral program together, so we know suffering. That's the truth. We know how to get through some stuff together. And Dr. Rayburn leads the Assemblies of God for the whole state of Florida, so honored you're with us today. Love you, man. If you were here last weekend, it was a party. We had guests from all over come in, and it was a big celebration as we celebrated the grand opening of this building. And what I said last week was so important. It's a building. We love the building, but the building is a tool because really the church is about people and it's about reaching people. And what was awesome is last Sunday as we were celebrating here, 7 hours prior to that in the other side of the world in Kenya, our missionary Wayne Derry opened another church that your giving and your generosity built. And last weekend I showed you a picture of it, but we didn't have a video, and I thought you would like to see the video. So turn your attention to the screen and check out what your generosity did.
Taylor. Hey, Wayne Derry here from the Plan International, and we are now in your 7th church building that you guys have built. We're out here in the bush, and these people had an amazing celebration. They are so excited and so happy for all that you have done. And we just wanted to say thank you. What's so awesome about this church building is today you guys are going to have the grand opening of your very first church. And here we are having the grand opening of your 7th church building out here in the bush of Africa. Because of your legacy giving, we've been able to absolutely change a region. Today, over 1,000 people met in the 7 churches that you have built. And so we wanted to say thank you, but we taught them to say Ashe Oling, which means thank you very much, Access Church, all right? You know the drill. We've done this a bunch of times. And so here we go. Are you ready? Yes.
Come on, can we celebrate that together, everybody? It's amazing. Wayne said we had over 1,000 people in Africa worshiping together in buildings because of your generosity. We had way more than 1,000 people here last weekend, and I think that makes God proud, everybody. I really do. And so let's get to work today. It's Easter Sunday. It's Easter celebration day. I got a message for you today that I really do believe is a word from God for you today. That no matter where you are in your relationship with God, that He has something for all of us today. It's a message called 3-Day Weekend. You ever have a day that just didn't go the way you expected it to go? Like you had plans, you had expectations for how it would go, but it just didn't shake out that way? Well, we've been opening this building, so I've been trying to step up my clothes game. In fact, I bought me a suit for this day today, just trying to look good for you, but mostly for that doll over there, and just trying to look good. So a few weeks ago, we were having a practice service, and I went to Banana Republic, and I bought me this jacket that I thought was so cool. It was fly. I was going to drip, as the kids say. And so I buy this jacket, but Liz doesn't know about it. So it's morning time, it's early on Sunday, and I'm getting myself ready to go for church. I go in my closet, and I put on this new fly outfit, and I walk into the bathroom, and Liz looks at me, and she said the word wow. But it wasn't like, wow. It was like, wow. And then she goes, babe, you look like Nick Jonas. Still get jealous. I can't sing it. And she goes, you look like Nick Jonas, but then she said these 6 words, but not in a good way. Now I want you to know, can't nobody take my stride, can't nobody hold me down. I'm wearing it next Sunday, but I want you to know that didn't go the way I expected it to go. You ever have this moment? And let me play a game with you for a minute. What if there was a way for you to know in advance when there was going to be awkward moments? And what if there was a way for you to know in advance when there was going to be pain or rejection or hurt? What if there was a way for you to know in advance what was going to happen? A couple years ago, I went to Israel, and Israel's like 7 or 8 hours ahead of the time zone here in Florida. And so it was awesome being there, but it made talking to my family kind of challenging. You see, when I would talk to them first thing in the morning here, it was already 2 or 3 in the afternoon in Israel. And then if I wanted to talk to my kids before school, it was like early morning for me. So I'd have to wake up at like 3 a.m. to talk to them as they were getting ready for school. And there was one day, it was 3 a.m. for me the next day, and the kids this is when they're getting ready for bed, and I'm talking to my kids before they go to bed, and it was funny. One of them had like a test coming up, like a math test or history test, and they said, Dad, you know, I'm really nervous about this. Like, I'm nervous about this test. I don't think I'm gonna make it. I don't think I'm gonna pass. And I said, hey, buddy, I got some good news for you. I'm already living in tomorrow. Like, I know what happens in the future. I'm in the future. I know what's gonna happen. You're going to be fine. Really? I said, yeah, of course. I know, I'm 8 hours ahead of you. I know what's happening in the future. Now, how amazing would it be for you and for me if we had that? Like if you had someone kind of tipping you off to what's gonna happen in the future. Like if you found out she was gonna break up with you, you could text her in advance and you could call the shots. You could break up with her, save some face, right? Like if you knew in advance that you weren't gonna win that business contract, you could adjust the contract and you could slide it in at the last minute and you could win it, right? And if you knew in advance what was going to happen, you could make a lot of money, couldn't you? You could be like Biff, and Marty McFly could give you the sports almanac and you could win all kinds of stuff, right? It would be amazing if you knew what was going to happen in advance. Think about all the pain it would feel like you would avoid. Think about all the rejection you could avoid. But I have a thought for you. If this was hypothetically true and you could predict what was going to happen, you knew what was going to happen, pain would still hurt. And rejection would still hurt, because pain is pain and hurt is hurt and rejection is rejection. Betrayal would still hurt. Betrayal might be the worst kind of pain. It's because you get shot in the back and you turn around and you find out it was by a person that you thought had your back, right? And betrayal would hurt, and loss would hurt, and loneliness would still hurt. And it doesn't matter if you know in advance what's going to happen. When you're living in the moment, the pain is still real. Now, if you can understand that, maybe you can understand how Jesus' disciples had to feel on Easter Sunday morning. They were dejected. Jesus had said that he was going to die. He told them that. He told them he would rise again from the dead. But they were living in the middle of the story. And usually when people die, they stay dead. And Jesus has said that he's going to do all these things. But the problem is they're living in the middle of the story. And they don't know how the story ends. They don't have Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John's accounts. We call them the Gospels. They don't know the end of the story. They're living in the middle of it. And they're dejected. They're wondering if they feel like they've wasted their life. They're wondering if they gave the last 3 years of their life to something that was all a scam. They're wondering if this whole thing was just some elaborate prank by Jesus. They're wondering if they left their careers and their families for something that all washed up as meaningless. They're just wondering what they've given their lives to. If you can understand that, then I want you to look at the Easter story, hopefully today from a different perspective than you've ever thought before. This is Mark. He's, again, one of the 4 accounts of Jesus' life. Here's his snapshot. It says, when Jesus rose early on the first day of the week, so this is Resurrection Sunday. Jesus has come back to life from the dead just as he promised. He appeared first to Mary Magdalene, out of whom he had driven 7 demons. Now pause here for just a moment. One of the things you need to know, that this is just an important detail in the story, is Jesus is Jesus. He could have appeared to anyone first, but he chose to appear to Mary, a woman. Now this is a big deal, because in Jesus' day, women were seen as having less value and less worth. But Jesus chooses to show up to a woman first. Why does this matter? Because to your Creator, every single person who breathes a breath of air on this earth is a son or a daughter of God, and they have equal value and equal worth to him. They just do. It's a big deal. So Jesus shows up to Mary, and she's shocked. Another one of the gospel accounts of it says she doesn't even recognize him until she hears his voice. And it goes on to say this, next verse. She went and told those who had been with him and who were mourning and weeping. Now pause here. What did she tell them? That she had seen him with her own eyes. She didn't just have a feeling. She didn't just wake up one day in a good mood and tell a story. She saw him with her own eyes. And the reason this matters to me is there's a lot of good stories out there, but this story is different because people were willing to die for what they had seen. Now, I've seen a lot of people lie about stuff. Certainly you've lied and I've lied at some point in my life. but I would never be willing to die for a lie. I just wouldn't. No one would be willing to die the way that many of these people who saw Jesus rise again from the dead with their own eyes, nobody would be willing to die for that kind of a lie. It proves in a practical, beautiful kind of way the significance and the reality of the resurrection. She sees him and she goes and tells all of her friends that knew Jesus, but look how they respond. When they heard that Jesus was alive and she had seen him, they did not believe it. Why would they? This doesn't seem, it's too good to be true. It makes no sense at all. And then Mark changes the perspective of the camera to another story. It says this: afterward, Jesus appeared in a different form to two of them while they were walking in the country. So these two guys are just walking down the road, and it says this: these returned, when they understood who Jesus was, they returned and reported it to the rest, but they did not believe either. So you have two different accounts of one person and then two different people walking together, and they see Jesus, and when they see Jesus and they report the story, nobody tends to believe it. Well, why is that? It's because, like I said earlier, typically when someone dies, they tend to stay dead. Maybe they experienced in that moment something that many of us have thought about our relationship with God. Yeah, Jesus did a lot of good stuff. Yeah, they saw him do all the miracles and they saw him talk about God in beautiful, unique kinds of ways. But he's dead. It felt like the story was over. And certainly they thought, it's too good to be true. It's too good to be true to believe that he could be who he says he was. It's too good to be true to believe that he could actually rise again from the dead. It's just too good to be true. And I wonder how many of us came in today with that kind of feeling. It's just too good to be true that Jesus could resurrect my life, could resurrect my hope, could resurrect my future. It's too good to be true to believe that Jesus could resurrect the purpose that I have for my life. It's too good to be true that Jesus could resurrect my marriage. It's too good to be true that Jesus could get me out of this financial ditch I've gotten myself into. It's too good to be true to believe that Jesus could heal me from anxiety or depression or suicidal thoughts. It's just too good to be true. And if you felt that way, you're not alone. In fact, probably most of us at one point or another have felt it's too good to be true. But on that Easter Sunday, what you're going to discover as we track through the story is that these people who encountered the living, resurrected Jesus experienced something. And here's my hope, is that all of us experience it today too. It's this idea that Easter must move from history to personal. It's got to move from a story that we read about in the Bible the same way we read history books about the history of the world to being something that forever changes our lives. That's my hope. My hope is that all of us leave today and we move this story from being something that we talk about, that we dress up for, that we celebrate once a year, to being the reality that forever revolutionizes who we are. Now to do this, I want to go back to the same story. Remember, Jesus appeared to Mary, and then he appears to these two guys, and they're walking. Now, if we go to one of the other accounts of the story, it's by a guy named Luke. Luke was a doctor. He's kind of detailed in the way he writes. And in the book of Luke, he gives us a different perspective on the same story about Jesus showing up to these guys. Now, remember, it says that he's kind of shown up in disguise. They don't know who he is. I don't know what he did. Maybe he pulled his hair up in a man bun or his aviator sunglasses or a hoodie. I don't know what he's doing, but they don't know who he is. And I want you to see what it says about these guys. He, talking about Jesus, he talks to them and he says, "What are you discussing together as you walk along? What are you guys talking about?" And it's funny to me because it's Jesus. Like, Jesus knows everything. He knows what they're talking about. They're talking about him. And it says this: they stood still with their faces downcast. What is happening? Their bodies are in the posture that their souls feel. Downcast, downtrodden, defeated, deflated, worthless. And Jesus just rolls up on them. They have no idea who is there. And he says, "What are you guys talking about?" And I want you to see what they say. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened in these days? Are you new to town? Have you not been reading the news? Did you not get the news update on your phone? Like, what is happening?" And I like how Jesus responds. They're talking about him, and Jesus is like, "What? Huh? What are you talking about? What things?" he asked. "About Jesus of Nazareth," they replied. "He was a prophet, powerful in word and before God and all the people." And they say, it went bad. It said the chief priests and our rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and they crucified him. Now, I love paying attention to grammar. It ends with a semicolon. It's not the end of a sentence, but it feels like the end of a sentence. It feels like the end of a story because they crucified him. And now these men, and really all the disciples and all the people who followed Jesus, felt the same thing. That they didn't know how to process what they were feeling in this moment. Jesus had made some big, audacious claims, but now he is dead. So what I want to do for these next few minutes is I want to look at the 3-day weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and I want to find your story, and I want to find my story in the story of the 3-day weekend of the crucifixion, the death, the burial, and the resurrection of Jesus. It's all found in the story we just read. You have these guys who it says about them that their faces are downcast. That means their souls are hurting. I could say it to you like this: Friday is a day of pain. Friday's a day of pain. What you need to understand is that everybody who loved Jesus, all the people who had seen the miracles, they saw him turn water to wine. They saw him walk on water. They saw him pray for people who were dead, and they watched as air filled their lungs again. Like they saw Jesus. He was their hero, and they stood at the foot of the cross, and in the shadow of the cross, they watched their hero exhale his last breath. And one of the translations of Scripture says he gave up his spirit. That phrase in Greek literally means to like hand over, but it's not permanent. It's like to let someone borrow your car keys. It's like, I'm going to get this back from you at some point, but he exhales his last breath and he hands over his spirit. And they watched his head hang in death. And pain was the common experience of everyone in that moment. What you need to understand about the Easter story is this, is that no matter what you're going through, Jesus understands your pain. If you're on Friday, if you're living on Friday, Jesus understands your pain. Certainly he understands physical pain. If you struggle with physical pain in your body, no one gets it more than Jesus. It says about Jesus that he was one day adored and the next day turned upon by his people. He was found guilty of a crime he hadn't done, sentenced to death. The Romans, they beat him with a whip called the cat of nine tails. The cat of nine tails was this whip that the Romans invented. It had 9 straps of leather. And at the end of each of the straps of leather was a piece of bone or glass or metal. And when it would beat you, the whip would hurt you, but the glass and the metal would embed in your skin. And when they ripped it off, it would rip your skin off. We as Americans, we don't like this. So we sanitize it. We make it a little easier and more palatable. But this was gruesome. The Romans believed that if a person was beaten 40 times with this whip, it would kill them. So they beat Jesus 39 times with it. And then on his raw, exposed back, they made him carry the very cross that he would just moments later be nailed to. And he carried the cross through the city as people who moments before had adored him now spit upon him, kicked him, ripped hair out of his face. And they watched as Jesus was led up a hill, nailed to a cross. Now, the Roman government, they figured out how to take capital punishment and how to extend it to the most excruciating length possible. Instead of just killing a person, they wanted to make a mockery out of them. So they would strip you naked. For Jesus, they took a crown of thorns. They said, if you claim to be the king, the Son of God, we'll call you king. And they pulled a crown of thorns over his head, piercing his head. They nailed him with his back raw to a cross. Pain had to shoot through his body, but crucifixion didn't cause a person to die by loss of blood. Crucifixion caused the person to die by lack of oxygen. You see, they would nail you to a cross, but the weight of your body would pull you down, crushing your lungs. So the only way to get a breath was to pull yourself up, but to do it, it shoots waves of pain throughout every inch of your body. So you would let yourself drop. And this happened over and over and over again for Jesus. Certainly he understands your pain. Maybe more so than that, Jesus understands emotional pain. He was betrayed by one of his close inner circle guys, Judas. He had another person turn on him named Peter. You need to know, Jesus had 12 disciples, but really he had like 72 disciples. They were with him everywhere he went. But the 12, they were the ones that get the airtime, but then there were 3, Peter, James, and John. Peter, James, and John were his boys. They got to go to the extra special places with Jesus. If Jesus had Instagram, there would be lots of pictures of Peter, James, and John, lots of selfies, lots of Insta stories. This is what would have happened with Jesus. And then one of his guys at the Last Supper said, Jesus, we'll never turn on you. And hours later, as Jesus is arrested, fear arrests Peter's heart. And what does Peter do? One of his inner circle 3 guys, he denies that he even knew Jesus 3 times. Jesus understands betrayal. Jesus understands what it means to be in a crowd and feel all alone. Jesus understands what it's like to not be able to sleep at night. Jesus understands all of the emotions that the human can experience because he put on flesh and blood and lived for us. He understands your pain. But I want to say this to you about pain. Jesus died on a Friday so that you wouldn't have to stay stuck in your Friday. Jesus died on a Friday so that if you're living in pain, if pain is the metaphor of your story, you don't have to stay stuck there. You no longer have to live a life characterized by pain, but instead that through Jesus' death on the cross, you can receive healing once and for all, physically, spiritually, and emotionally. He died on a Friday so you wouldn't have to stay stuck on a Friday. Well, Friday's a day of pain. Let's keep reading the story as these travelers are walking towards this place. Jesus rolls up on them, but he's disguised who he is. And these next 4 words are so important. They say, but we had hoped. 4 words, past tense. We had hoped. We had this belief at one point. What is hope? Hope is an expectation of a preferred future. We had this expectation of God that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel. And what is more, it is the 3rd day since all this took place. They knew that Jesus said he would die and then on the 3rd day he would rise again from the dead. But these guys were living a difficult life because in the middle of their story was a day that felt hopeless. Friday's a day of pain. Saturday is a day without hope. This is a terrible way to live your life, isn't it? And when you've walked through a lot of pain, it's really easy to lose the clarity to see the future. When you've walked through pain, pain has this way of making you nearsighted, only able to see what is directly in front of you. And some of you have walked through a lot of pain. If you're one of the disciples, it makes sense that this is how you feel, doesn't it? If you saw your hero nailed to a cross, tried as a criminal, beaten, abused, spit upon, and die, it'd be easy to live without hope. I don't even blame them for losing hope. In the same way, I've met with hundreds of people over the years. Some of your stories have been so challenging that I even think to myself, like, I don't blame you for losing hope at times. It's just true. And the question that people who are hopeless tend to ask is, why even try? What difference is it even going to make? Why have hope for tomorrow if it feels like every time I get my hopes up, I stumble on my own feet and I trip and fall over and over and over again? I just want to say this to someone in the room. I think there's some of you who came today and you've even lost hope in God. What is hope? It's an expectation placed on the future. It's a picture that tomorrow can be better than today. Some of you put hope on God and expectation on God, and I just want to say this to you. You need to understand something about God. It's that God exists above our reality. He does. Like, we live in a world that time is linear. Like you're born at a certain day, you live a certain number of days, and then you die at a certain point. God lives outside of that. He does. God can see the beginning and he can see the end. God knows your start date and God knows your finish date. In the book of Romans, Paul says that God works all things together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purposes. If this is true, then what it means for you and what it means for me is that if we can learn when it's difficult to trust God, it means that maybe he's doing something that we can't see. So think about the story. Jesus dies on a Friday. He's buried on Saturday. On Friday, the world is in pain. But on Saturday, they're dealing with the deafening silence of the day. So what does that mean? It means the earth stood still. It seemed as hope was lost. But you need to understand, God's silence does not equal his inactivity. God's silence does not equate to his absence. Just because God is silent doesn't mean he's not working. And some of you are like, God has been silent for years in my life. And I just want to say, is it possible that you're living on your schedule, but God is living at his? And you're in the middle of your story and it feels like God is silent, but God's silence does not equate to his inactivity. God's at work. He's doing something. Okay, go back with me to the road to Emmaus. Jesus is with these guys and they still don't know who he is. They've expressed the pain that they feel over the pain that he experienced. They have lost hope in the future. And then Jesus goes on, like the next 5 or 6 verses, Jesus kind of gives them a Sunday school lesson. He takes them back to church and he tells them what all the people before had prophesied would happen with Jesus, and they still don't know it's him. And they kind of reach the town where they're going. And the guys are like, hey, listen, it's been fun talking with you. You want to grab dinner with us? And so it says this towards the end in verse 30. It says, when he was at the table with them, he took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and began to give it to them. Now pause here for just a moment. The last time that these people had a meal with Jesus is at that meal that we call the Last Supper. The Last Supper, Jesus takes the bread and he breaks it. And he says, this represents my body broken for you. And he takes the wine and he drinks it. And he says, this represents my blood spilled for you. Do these things often in remembrance of me. And so when he's there with them, they don't know it's him. He breaks the bread. And there's something about the brokenness of this moment that causes their eyes to be opened. It says this, next verse. Then their eyes were opened and they recognized him. It's like, what? And then it's like Jesus is just messing with them. He's like pranking them. It says then he just disappeared. He's just like, all right, guys, good talk, good walk, I'm out. And he leaves. They're like, what was that? And then they asked each other, were not our hearts burning within us while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us? And they got up and they returned. Next verse. They got up and returned at once to Jerusalem. There they found the 11, the other disciples, and those with them assembled together. And here's what they said, 3 words, it is true. It's true. It's true we experienced. The Lord is risen and he's appeared to Simon. Like there is some reality here. And even though it doesn't make sense, and even though it felt like God was silent, he was at work, because on Friday we experienced pain. Saturday feels like a day of hopelessness. But you need to know that no matter how dark and desolate Friday and Saturday feel, Sunday, resurrection is always coming. It is. Friday is about pain. Saturday is hopelessness. But Sunday is a day of freedom. It's a day of freedom. You say, freedom from what? Well, the death, burial, and the resurrection ultimately of Jesus paints this beautiful picture for us. 750-ish years before Jesus lived, there was a prophet named Isaiah who prophesied what would happen there on Calvary's Hill. He said it like this, in the book of Isaiah. He says, but he was pierced for our transgressions, for the things that you would do wrong, for the sin in your life, and crushed for our iniquities, the wrong thoughts that we have. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are what? Come on, say it. By his wounds we are healed. Healed of what? Healed of the pain of Friday. Healed of the hopelessness of Saturday. Healed of our sin. Healed of our shame. Healed of the condemnation we feel. We are healed and be able to be made in right standing with God once again. We're healed once and for all. Problem is, so many of us struggle with that concept. It's like we kind of get it, but we keep finding ourselves reverting back to Friday or Saturday and we miss the point. Heard a story this week about 2 inmates who escaped from a prison somewhere up in upstate New York. And just imagine this, if we're just having fun, imagine that you broke out of jail. Wouldn't it feel good for a couple days to get out of there? To go through McDonald's, get you a Big Mac, find a car, you drive a car, you feel some freedom for a minute. Wouldn't that feel good? Let me ask you this question though. For those who escaped, were they actually free? No. Why? Because even though it felt like they had some freedom, if they just looked over their shoulder, they knew that at any point, someone could find them, recognize them, have them arrested, and have them immediately thrown back in prison. And I think this is how so many Christians live. And Easter is a reminder you don't have to live that way. Always looking in the rearview mirror of your life. That once and for all, you can receive freedom from your sin, freedom from your shame, freedom from the condemnation of your past. I'll say it to you like this. When I was in college, I waited tables, and I loved waiting tables. Some people hate it. I loved it. Like, I love any job where the amount of money I make is tied to how hard that I work. And so I liked it. I loved it. So I spent 2 years working at the OG, the Olive Garden. And I like the Olive Garden. Olive Garden teaches you should bring 1 breadstick per person at the table. Not your boy. Minimum of 3 per. Minimum of 3. And if you look like you've had some breadsticks, it was 4 for you. You know what I'm saying? Like, I hooked it up. But one night, I was waiting at the Olive Garden, and this older man came in and he goes, I like you. I said, I like you. And he goes, I want to offer you a job at my restaurant. Turns out it's like a 5-star Italian restaurant. So I upgraded from the OG to like real Italian food, and I go work there, and it was fun. It was a real fancy place. I had to wear a tuxedo. And it was a place that attracted very affluent people, very well-to-do, wealthy people. And I used to love it because I would look at their watches, I would look at the clothes they were wearing. Everybody was all Gucci'd out in really nice clothes. And I would like to slip into the parking lot if I had a free moment, and I was like, can't afford that car, can't afford that car, can't afford those tires. You know what I mean? I couldn't afford any of it. And it was just fun working there. And it attracted like some really interesting people. And there was a man who came in who I found out was a renowned brain surgeon. And he came in often, and often he would ask for me. And I'll be honest with you, the guy was kind of a jerk. Like, he was just not fun to wait on. He was rude. He sent almost every meal back for some reason or another. But the dude tipped really heavy, and I liked it. You know what I mean? So it's like, I'll deal with some frustration, show me the Benjamins, and just deal with it. So anyways, there was this one night that this weird thing happened. He always came by himself, and he sat in the corner table where he almost always sat by himself. And I was waiting on him and dealing with the frustration of him. And while this was happening, someone across the restaurant flagged me down and asked me to come over. And they said, hey, that guy in the corner is kind of a friend of mine. I want to pay for his meal. And I was like, awesome. That's awesome. You ever had this happen to you? You ever had someone pay for your meal? It is the best thing ever. You think to yourself, should have gotten dessert, right? Like, that's what you think, right? And so this happens, and I'm so excited. Now, in your worship guide, you should have gotten a little ticket that looks like this. It says guest check on it. Do you have this? Pull this out. The reason this is important is, at the Olive Garden, everything is run on a computer. But at this other Italian restaurant I worked at, it's all like mom and pops. So we didn't use any computers at all. We had to handwrite everything. With some age and maturity, I figured out the reason we did this is so the IRS would have no idea what we actually sold, but that's a different conversation for a different day. Can't be forgiven of sin if you don't sin, right, Gary? And so, anyway, so on this check, we would handwrite everything. Chicken marsala, $22.95. Chicken parmesan, $19.95. Then we'd add it up, put the tax on it, we'd give it to the person. Well, I've got this man's bill, but someone else already paid it. So I walk over to him, and I'm feeling like Ryan Seacrest, and the next American Idol is. I feel like I've got this big moment. And I say it to the guy, I was like, you're not going to believe this, but somebody paid your bill. If that's me, I'm hugging the waiter. I'm high-stepping up out of that place. You know what I mean? Like, I'm excited. But this man has the opposite reaction. He goes, no. No. No, 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 no. And he pulls his wallet out, and he says, no one pays for my meal. And he took two $100 bills, and he slammed them on the table, and he walked out. Now, I had two different thoughts in that moment. First thought was, baller tip for your boy. I'm getting the filet tonight. That's what I thought. And second thought I had was this, though. Who pays for something that's already been paid for? Who does that? Who pays for something that's already been paid for? And this Easter, I want to say to you, some of you are stuck in that same situation in your spirit. You're paying for something over and over and over again that's already been paid for. On the cross of Calvary, when Jesus died, he paid the price once and for all for your sins. The Easter story of Jesus' resurrection is the reminder that no matter what you've done and no matter how far you've run from God, ultimately it is the grace of God that pays the bill for your life. So stop paying for it if it's already been paid for. So what would it look like for you if today was the day you realized that I've been living on Friday, but Jesus invites me to Sunday? I'm living in pain. Maybe you're stuck on Saturday and your life feels hopeless. Today's the day that hope can flood your heart, because no matter how dark Friday is and no matter how desolate and hopeless Saturday feels, Sunday is always coming. Jesus rose again from the dead so that you could experience life. Maybe you came in today and you're far from God. Your life feels like Friday or Saturday. Today, on this Easter Sunday, I think it would be amazing if the resurrection of Jesus became a reality in your life and you made the decision to follow him. I'm going to ask you all across this room to bow your head and close your eyes. Maybe today, as a reminder to you, you need to take that guest check out. You need to write down the things that you've been forgiven of to remind yourself that it's been paid. Maybe you're here, though, today, and you don't know if you're in relationship with Jesus. You don't know if you're walking with him, if you've started a relationship with him. You don't know if he's forgiven your sins once and for all. Maybe that means you've never started a relationship with God, or maybe you've wandered so far away from it. If today you want to start or restart a relationship with God, to receive the gift of God's grace that paid the bill for your sins, I want to give you a moment right now. So in this moment of reflection, if you would say, Jason, I don't know if I'm in right standing with God, but today I want to start or restart a relationship with Jesus, would you just raise your hand? No one's looking and no one's talking because this moment's for you. Wow, wow, wow. All across the room, back here, yep. All weekend it's been like this. It's you, back here, yep, I see you. Thank you, up here, yep. All across this room, here's your moment. And if this is you, I'm going to ask you in this moment right now to just pray this prayer with me. Listen, praying a prayer only changes your life if you mean it with your heart. So in this moment now, would you pray this with me? Would you say, Jesus, today, I surrender my life to you. I invite you to be the Lord of my life. Jesus, I invite you to forgive my sins. Thank you for stepping into this world for me. Thank you for dying on a cross for me. And it's because of your love and your sacrifice that I can be made new. So Jesus, take my life. I give you control. From this day forward, I'll live for you. I love you and I surrender my life to you now. And it's in your name, Jesus, that I pray. Amen. Hey, everybody, look up at me. We just had people all across the room pray. Can we celebrate with them? Come on, give God your best, everybody. I love him.